The morning a stranger fell asleep on my shoulder somewhere above Colorado, I thought the strangest part of my day would be pretending not to breathe too loudly for 2 hours. I was wrong. By the time we landed, she would slip one thing into my hand that made me follow her into an airport terminal full of people and realize, far too late, that sometimes your life changes before you even know the other person's name. My name is Caleb Morgan. I'm 36, divorced, and the kind of man who had gotten very good at making travel feel mechanical. Boarding pass, window seat, noise-canceling headphones, black coffee. No conversation unless absolutely required by federal law or basic human decency. I wasn't rude, just tired. After my divorce, I had built a quiet life in Denver around things I could control. I managed operations for a regional bookstore company, which meant my days were full of inventory systems, store schedules, budget calls, and the surprisingly emotional politics of where to put the new fiction table. It was a stable life, maybe too stable. That morning, I was flying to Portland for a store opening. 3-hour flight. One carry-on, no drama. The plan was to land, check into a hotel, review the store layout, survive 2 days of meetings, and go home. Then she sat down beside me. I noticed 3 things immediately. First, she was running late. Not airport late exactly. More like life had been chasing her through 3 terminals and she'd only barely escaped. Second, she looked exhausted. Not messy, not careless. Just worn thin around the edges in a way nice clothes couldn't hide. Dark hair pinned up loosely, cream sweater. Long coat folded over one arm, one small suitcase and a canvas tote pressed to her side like she was afraid to let either one go. Third, she was trying very hard not to look scared. That was the one that got me. Because people who are scared of flying usually say it. They joke. They grip the seat. They ask if turbulence is normal. She didn't do any of that. She sat down, buckled her seatbelt, folded her hands in her lap, and stared straight ahead like she was in a courtroom waiting for a verdict. I glanced at her once, then looked away. Again, not rude. Just trying not to be the guy who mistakes a stranger's private panic for an invitation. The plane pushed back from the gate. She closed her eyes. The safety demonstration started. She opened them again too fast. "You okay?" I asked before I could stop myself. She turned her head toward me. Up close, her eyes were green-gray and sharper than the rest of her looked. Like whatever exhaustion she carried had not managed to dull the part of her that still noticed everything. "Yes," she said. Then, after 1 second, she added, "No." That made me smile a little. That's more believable. "I hate takeoff," she said. "Most people hate delays more. I'd take a delay. That's serious." She gave a tiny laugh, but it didn't last. The engines deepened. The plane began moving. Her hand tightened around the armrest between us. I looked down at it, then back at her face. "Do you want me to talk?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "During takeoff. Some people like distraction." "What would you talk about?" "Books, terrible airport coffee, why every boarding group secretly thinks the other boarding groups are morally inferior." That got the smallest real smile out of her. "Boarding group 2 is insufferable," she said. "Exactly." The plane sped down the runway. She went pale. So I talked about the Denver airport horse statue and why it looked like it knew too much. About a man I once saw try to bring 6 snow globes through security. About the fact that airport muffins are priced like medical devices. Somewhere between the wheels leaving the ground and the plane leveling out above the clouds, her breathing steadied. She looked over at me, embarrassed. "You're good at that. At airport muffin criticism? At making panic feel stupid." "Not stupid," I said. "Just not in charge." That quieted her. For a while we didn't talk. The flight attendants came through. She ordered water. I ordered coffee. She pulled a paperback from her tote but didn't open it. I pretended to read a report on my tablet and absolutely did not notice that she kept rubbing her thumb over the corner of an envelope tucked inside her book. Eventually she said, "I'm Harper." I looked over. "Caleb." "Thank you, Caleb." "For what?" "Not making me feel ridiculous." I shrugged. I've had enough bad days in public to know they don't improve when strangers narrate them. Her smile came again, softer this time. And that should have been the whole story. A nervous passenger, a polite conversation. Two strangers passing 3 hours in row 17. Except somewhere over Utah, the cabin lights dimmed, the clouds thickened, and the plane hit a rough patch of turbulence hard enough to make several people gasp at once. Harper grabbed the armrest. Then, without seeming to realize she was doing it, she grabbed my sleeve too. "It's okay," I said quietly, still not in charge. She let out one shaky breath, then another. The plane steadied after a minute, but she didn't fully let go. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You're fine. I'm not usually like this. I believe you." She looked at me then, and for one strange second, her face did something I couldn't read. Like she wanted to say a much bigger thing and didn't trust the air enough to hold it. Instead, she leaned back. 10 minutes later, she was asleep. On my shoulder. Not dramatically, not romantically. Just a slow, exhausted drift until her temple rested against my jacket and her breathing finally evened out. I froze. Then I very carefully did nothing. Because whatever had brought Harper onto that plane had clearly taken more out of her than she wanted a stranger to know. So I sat still, let my coffee go cold, held my tablet in one hand without reading a word. And for almost an hour, I became the kind of man whose entire job was not waking someone who desperately needed rest. When she stirred, we were beginning our descent. She lifted her head, realized where she had been sleeping, and went instantly red. "Oh my God," she said. "I am so sorry." "It's okay." "No, that's humiliating." It was the least dramatic thing that happened on this flight. She looked at me, then laughed once, small and disbelieving. The pilot announced our landing. The cabin shifted into that strange end-of-flight energy. Trays up, bags checked, everyone suddenly pretending they didn't spend 3 hours trapped together in a tube in the sky. Harper grew quiet again. Not like before takeoff. Worse. Her hand moved to the paperback in her lap, then to the envelope inside it. "Caleb," she said. I turned. She folded something small into my palm so quickly I almost missed it. Not a phone number, not a business card. A hotel keycard sleeve. Inside it was a handwritten note. I looked down just long enough to read the first line. "If I panic when we land, please pretend you know me." My eyes lifted to hers. Harper was staring straight ahead, face pale, jaw tight, as the plane touched down. And suddenly I understood that the flight had not been the thing she was afraid of. I kept the note hidden in my palm while everyone around us became aggressively normal. Seatbelts clicked, phones lit up. A man across the aisle stood too early and got politely shamed by the flight attendant. Somewhere behind us, a child announced with real authority that Portland smelled different. Harper didn't move. She sat beside me with her hands clasped tightly in her lap, staring at the seat back in front of her like it had become the only stable thing in the world. I leaned slightly closer, keeping my voice low. "Who's meeting you?" Her eyes closed for 1 second. My ex-fiancé. That was not on my list. I looked at the note again without opening my hand fully. "If I panic when we land, please pretend you know me." I turned back to her. "Do you need security?" "No." She swallowed. "No, he won't make a scene. That's not his style." Somehow that sounded worse. What is his style? Calm, polished, reasonable. She gave a humorless little smile. The kind of reasonable that makes everyone else wonder why you're overreacting. I understood more than I wanted to. The aisle started moving. People reached for bags. Harper stayed frozen until the row ahead of us cleared. Then she stood too quickly, pulled her tote over her shoulder, and nearly dropped her paperback. I caught it before it hit the floor. The envelope slipped out halfway. She reached for it fast. Not fast enough for me to miss the name written across the front. Harper Elaine Wells. Below that, in older handwriting, "Open only when you're brave enough to choose yourself." I handed it back without comment. That seemed to matter to her. "Thank you," she whispered. "For the book?" "For not asking yet." Yet. That one word followed us off the plane. Inside the jet bridge, the air felt colder. Harper walked beside me, close enough that a stranger would assume we knew each other, not close enough to make it a performance. Her face had changed completely. On the plane, she had been tired and nervous. Now she looked braced, like someone entering a room where she already knew the script and hated her part. "His name is Graham," she said quietly as we reached the terminal. "Okay? He was supposed to pick me up because my aunt told him my flight number. That seems unhelpful. My aunt believes every broken engagement is a misunderstanding if the man owns enough suits." I almost laughed. Then I saw her face and didn't. We came around the corner into arrivals, and I spotted him before she said anything. Graham looked exactly like the kind of man people trusted too quickly. Navy coat, perfect hair, nice shoes, calm posture. One hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone loosely like he had never once panicked in public. He saw Harper. His expression softened on command. Then he saw me beside her. That softness paused. "Good. Let it." "Harper," he said, walking toward us. "There you are." She stopped. For half a second, I thought she might step back. Instead, she held her ground. "Graham." His eyes moved to me, polite, evaluating, dismissive in a way that didn't need much facial movement. "And this is?" I felt Harper's tension spike beside me, so I answered before she had to. "Caleb." No explanation, just the name. Graham waited for more. I didn't give him any. That seemed to annoy him slightly, which was the first enjoyable part of the last 10 minutes. He looked back at Harper. "Your aunt said you were traveling alone." Harper's fingers tightened around the strap of her tote. "I was," she said. Then, after one breath, she added, "I'm not now." That was the first time she surprised him. I saw it. A small crack in the calm. He smiled again, but it had less warmth. "Can we talk privately?" "No." One word. Clear. It cost her something. I could tell by the way her shoulders stayed too still after she said it. Graham glanced at me like I was a chair in the wrong place. "This is a family matter." "I'm not family," I said. "No," he replied smoothly. "You're a stranger." Harper's voice came in, quiet but steady. "He was kind to me on the flight. That's more than some people have managed with years of practice." There it was again. The crack. Only this time Graham couldn't cover it fast enough. His jaw tightened. Then he softened his voice, which somehow made me dislike him more. "Harper, you're upset." "I understand that." "No," she said. "You understand how to sound like you understand." That line landed so cleanly I almost looked at her with open admiration. Almost. I kept my eyes on Graham. He stepped closer. Not much. Just enough to test the space. I moved half a step forward, not blocking Harper, just making it clear he would have to address both of us if he kept pressing. Graham noticed. Harper noticed too. Her breathing changed. Safer, maybe. Or shocked that somebody had made space without taking control. Graham gave me a thin smile. "You don't know anything about this." "That's true," I said. "But I know she said no." For the first time, he had no polished answer ready. The crowd moved around us, rolling suitcases, announcements overhead, families hugging near baggage claim, normal airport chaos, completely indifferent to the fact that one woman was trying to leave an old version of her life in the middle of it. Graham finally looked back at Harper. "You're really going to do this here?" Her face went pale, but she nodded. "Yes." Then she reached into her paperback and pulled out the envelope. Not the note she'd given me. The bigger one. The one with her name and that sentence about bravery. Graham saw it and something sharp moved across his face. "You opened that?" Harper's hand trembled, but she held the envelope against her chest. "Not yet." "Harper." "No." Her voice cracked slightly, then steadied. "My mother left this for me. Not you. Not Aunt Diane. Me." That changed the whole scene. Her mother. The envelope. The fear. This had never been about the flight. It had been about landing in a city full of people who thought they still had a vote. Graham looked around, suddenly aware of the public space. "This isn't the time." Harper gave a small, shaky laugh. "You always say that when it's the first time I'm about to tell the truth." Then she turned to me. Her eyes met mine, and for one strange second, everything else blurred. Caleb, she said softly, would you walk with me to baggage claim? I nodded once. Yeah, I said, I can do that. We walked away from Graham together. He didn't follow, not right away, but I could feel his stare between my shoulder blades. At baggage claim, Harper stopped beside the carousel before the bags had even started moving. She was breathing too fast, one hand still clutching the envelope. I'm sorry, she said. You didn't sign up for this. No, I said. But you did ask me to pretend I knew you. Her mouth trembled toward a smile. And now, I looked at the envelope in her hand, then back at her face. Now I think I'd rather actually know you. The baggage carousel beeped to life. Harper stared at me like I'd just said something far more dangerous than it sounded. Then she looked down at the envelope, slid one finger under the seal, and whispered, "Then stay while I open it." I stayed, not because I had any right to, because she asked. Harper slid one finger under the flap of the envelope and opened it with the care of someone disarming a bomb made of memory. The baggage carousel groaned to life beside us, suitcases thudding down one by one. But she didn't look at them. Inside the envelope were two things: a folded letter and a small brass key taped to an index card. Harper stared at the key first. Her face changed in a way I couldn't read. What is it? I asked quietly. She touched the key with one fingertip. My mother's studio. I said nothing. She unfolded the letter. I didn't read over her shoulder. I looked away toward the carousel, toward the bags sliding past, toward anything that gave her a little privacy. Then Harper let out a sound so small I almost missed it. Not a sob. Not exactly. More like someone had found a door inside herself she thought was locked from the other side. Caleb, she whispered. I turned back. Her eyes were full now. She knew. I kept my voice low. Knew what? Harper looked at the letter again, then read one line aloud. If you are opening this because someone is trying to convince you that fear is love, then listen to me before you listen to them. The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe because I had only known Harper for a flight and already understood how badly she needed them. She kept reading silently. Her hand shook once. Then she pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. I waited, because waiting had become the only useful thing I knew how to do for her. When she opened her eyes, she said, My mom left me her old studio in Portland. Not the house, not the accounts, not anything my aunt could argue over, just the studio. She looked down at the key. A little place above a closed flower shop. She used to paint there before she got sick. That's why you came here? She nodded. The lease transfer meeting is tomorrow. My aunt told Graham because she thought he should help me make sensible decisions. I could hear the quotation marks around the words. And by sensible, I said, she meant decisions he approved of. Harper gave a faint, bitter smile. Exactly. A black suitcase came around the carousel. She didn't move fast enough, so I grabbed it and set it beside her. She looked at it like she had forgotten luggage existed. Then she turned sharply. Graham was walking toward us. This time, he wasn't alone. An older woman came with him, elegant in the polished, merciless way some people become when they confuse control with concern. Pearl earrings, camel coat, tight smile. Aunt Diane, Harper whispered. Diane reached us first. She looked at me once, filed me away as irrelevant, and turned all her attention on Harper. Sweetheart, she said. This has gone far enough. Harper's fingers tightened around the letter. Graham stood beside Diane with the posture of a man confident that reinforcements had arrived. Diane's eyes dropped to the envelope. You weren't supposed to open that in public. Harper's voice came out quiet. I wasn't supposed to need it in public. That made Diane blink just once. Then she recovered. Your mother was ill when she wrote that, emotional. You know how she got near the end. Harper flinched. I hated that. I hated how cleanly Diane knew where to press. Before I could say anything, Harper looked at the letter again, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope with the key. No, she said. Diane stared at her. Excuse me? No, Harper repeated, and this time the word was steadier. You don't get to turn her voice into symptoms just because it says something you don't like. The air around us changed, not loudly, but enough that Graham's expression shifted. Diane lowered her voice. Harper, don't embarrass yourself. Harper laughed once. It wasn't happy, but it was strong. You know what's strange? She said. I've been terrified of embarrassing myself all morning. On the plane, in the airport, in front of him. She glanced at me for half a second. And now that you're here, I realize I'm mostly just tired. Diane's mouth tightened. You are overwhelmed. No, I'm done being managed. That line landed so cleanly I felt it in my own chest. Graham stepped in, soft voice back in place. Harper, come on. Let's get you to the car. We can talk somewhere quiet. She looked at him. For the first time since I'd seen him, she didn't look afraid. She looked awake. You keep saying quiet, she said, but quiet always means I stop talking. Graham's calm cracked. You're making a mistake because of a stranger. No, Harper said. I'm standing here because a stranger treated my no like it mattered faster than you ever did. The silence after that was the kind airports almost never allow. Even Diane had no immediate answer. Harper reached down, took the handle of her suitcase, and turned to me. Are you still going to the downtown bookstore opening? She asked. The question was so unexpected I nearly missed it. Yes. My mother's studio's 3 blocks from there. Then she looked back at Graham and Diane. I'm taking a cab. Diane's face sharpened. Harper. No. Harper lifted the key in her hand. I'm going to my mother's studio. I'm going to sign the lease transfer tomorrow. And I'm going to decide what my life looks like before anyone else gets to call it sensible. Then she walked away. This time I followed, because she wanted me to. Not because she needed rescuing. There was a difference, and somehow that difference mattered more than anything else. Outside the terminal, rain misted the curb under the arrivals lights. Harper stopped beside the taxi line, breathing hard like she had just run farther than her body could carry. Then she turned to me. I'm sorry, she said. You keep apologizing for surviving very dramatic situations. That made her laugh. A real laugh this time. Small, shaky, but real. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted. No one does in airport arrivals. That is strangely comforting. I specialize in very limited comfort. She looked down at the brass key in her hand, then at me. Would it be insane if I asked you to walk me there? To the studio? Yes. Her eyes held mine. Not because I need you to pretend anymore. Because I don't think I want to be alone when I see it. I should have thought about meetings, schedules, the store opening, the fact that I had known this woman for less than one afternoon. Instead, I looked at the key in her hand and said, Then let's go see what she left you. Harper's face softened, and for the first time since the plane, she smiled like the fear was not the only thing in the room. The studio was above a closed flower shop on a narrow street 3 blocks from my hotel. It had an old green door, fogged windows, and a brass number screwed crookedly into the frame. Harper stood in front of it with the key in her hand like she was afraid the building might disappear if she moved too fast. You okay? I asked. No, she said. Then she looked at me and gave one small, honest smile, but not in the way I was before. That felt like progress. She unlocked the door. The staircase inside smelled like dust, rain, and old wood. At the top was another door, this one painted blue. Harper paused with her hand on the knob, took one breath, and opened it. The room was small. Just one wide window overlooking the street, wooden floors, a sink in the corner, shelves along one wall, and canvases stacked under a white sheet. Nothing grand. Nothing expensive looking. But the second Harper stepped inside, her whole face changed. Like some part of her had come home before the rest of her knew the address. She crossed the room slowly and pulled the sheet back. Paintings, dozens of them. Not polished gallery work, personal work. Messy color, unfinished edges, skies, women by windows, hands holding coffee mugs, a little girl in a yellow raincoat standing under a huge blue umbrella. Harper touched that one first. That was mine, she whispered. The raincoat. I stayed by the door, not because I wanted distance, because this moment didn't belong to me unless she invited me further into it. She found another envelope taped to the back of the yellow raincoat painting. This time, she opened it without shaking. I watched her read. Her mouth trembled once. Then she laughed through tears and pressed the letter to her chest. "What did she say?" I asked softly. Harper looked at me. She said, if I ever let someone convince me my life needed approval before it could begin, I should come here, open the window, and remember that she was happiest in rooms nobody else understood. That hit me in a place I wasn't expecting. She walked to the window and pushed it open. Cold air moved through the studio, lifting the corners of the old sheets and making the whole room feel awake. Then Harper turned back to me. "Thank you for walking with me. I'm glad you asked." "No." Her eyes stayed on mine. "Thank you for not turning it into a rescue." That mattered, because I knew exactly what she meant now. Graham had wanted to manage her. Diane had wanted to steer her. I had no right to do either. So I said, "You were already leaving. I just walked in the same direction." Her smile came slowly. Real. Soft. Tired, but hers. The next morning, she signed the lease transfer. I didn't go inside with her. I waited downstairs with 2 coffees and watched through the window as Harper sat across from a property manager, signed her name, and took possession of the one place her mother had protected from everyone else. When she came out, she looked different. Not fixed, stronger. Like the fear had not vanished, but it had lost authority. She lifted the keys and said, "I own a studio." I handed her a coffee. "That sounds dangerous." "It is." She looked down at the cup. "I think I might paint again." I smiled. "That sounds even more dangerous." She laughed, and this time there was no crack in it. That afternoon, she came to the bookstore opening. I saw her near the front display just as the ribbon-cutting crowd started thinning. She wore a dark green coat, her hair loose, and held one of the paper cups of cheap event coffee like it was terrible, and she respected it for trying. "You came," I said. "You said you'd be here. That's not the same as an invitation." "No," she said. "It was better. It was a fact I wanted to walk toward." That line stayed with me. We had dinner that night. Not a date, technically. At least that's what we told ourselves. It was just 2 people who had survived one strange flight, one airport confrontation, one inherited studio, and one bookstore opening, now sitting across from each other in a small ramen place while rain moved down the window. But when she reached across the table and touched my hand, just briefly, neither of us pretended it meant nothing. Graham called twice that week. She didn't answer. Diane sent 5 messages, each one polished into concern. Harper responded to only one. "I'm safe. I'm staying. I'll call when I'm ready, not when I'm pressured." Then she blocked Graham. The first real date happened 2 weeks later when I flew back to Portland for a regional follow-up meeting that could have been handled by email if I had been a more efficient man and a less honest one. Harper met me at the airport. No panic this time, no note in my hand, just her standing near arrivals with a smile she didn't try to hide. "You made it," she said. "So did you." That was when she kissed my cheek. Soft. Quick. Enough to make me forget every reasonable thing I had planned to say. 6 months later, I transferred to the Portland office. Not for her, not only. That distinction mattered to both of us. I had been ready for a change longer than I wanted to admit. Harper simply became the first good reason to stop calling my life stable when what I really meant was still. A year later, the studio was open every Saturday afternoon. Not as a formal gallery, not at first. Just Harper painting by the window, local artists dropping in, kids from the neighborhood using the big table for sketches, and me bringing coffee from the bookstore whenever she forgot lunch, which was often enough to become tradition. 2 years after the flight, I found the first note she ever gave me tucked inside a frame on her studio wall. "If I panic when we land, please pretend you know me." Under it, she had written a second line. "He did. Then he stayed long enough to actually know me." That was the day I knew I was gone. Not infatuated. not swept up by the drama of a stranger on a plane, gone in the quiet, ordinary, permanent way, the kind where you know exactly which mug she likes, when she's pretending not to be tired, and how her face changes when she finishes a painting and hasn't decided whether she hates it yet. 3 years later, we got married in the studio above the old flower shop. Small ceremony, open window, rain tapping the glass. Harper carried the brass key in her bouquet. And when people asked how we met, she always said, "I fell asleep on his shoulder." Then I'd add, "And then she handed me a note that ruined my entire travel schedule." She'd smile at me every time, like she was still glad I read it. What would you have done if a stranger fell asleep on your shoulder mid-flight, then slipped a note into your hand asking you to pretend you knew her when the plane landed? And have you ever had one unexpected moment with a stranger change the direction of your life? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.